Hey, what's up? It's me, your girl Nia. I am coming to you from Black Exploration with Nia. Drinking your water and minding your business is the best. That's when you literally have a chemical imbalance that is causing the personality defect of narcissism. I only want to talk about this because I have supported men through this. And I know that when men are in dark times, they drink alcohol or they have lots of sex. What value can you bring to this person and see in them?
So how much did you have to fix your relationship with yourself first in order to have a successful relationship with someone else? Even in the realm of dating.
When it comes down to it, people's opinions are not facts, it's just their opinions. Hey, what's up, guys? It's me, your girl Nia, back for another episode of Black Inspiration with Nia. Hey, so I am super excited to welcome our guest today, Dejan.
There you go.
Did I say it right?
That was right.
I like that too. That felt good. So, on this podcast, we are all about transparency, authenticity. So, there is no hiding who you are here. And so, I'm excited for this conversation. I'm excited to create a safe space for you to just kind of flow. We on this podcast love to have the audience participate. So please comment, share. Also, shout out to SJ10. Go ahead and follow them on YouTube. We want to hear from you guys too. So if you guys want to join the show or you have comments, hit my boy Dejan up. We are going to have our engineers put his info in the bio. And we're going to just start this party, right? Have fun. We got Dejan in the house. I'm going to keep saying that because it makes my heart feel good.
It rang. It do something. You know what I'm saying? Go ahead.
And it just makes me feel good. So today we're going to be talking about all topics. We talk about the four key areas of holistic balance. The audience knows it's spirituality, physical and mental health, financial freedom,
Talk to me.
and intimacy.
Okay.
And so your boy Dejan chose all four. He wants to go all in.
They all connected.
Yes. So you guys are in for a treat right now. So a lot of wisdom, a lot of guidance, a lot of support, and a lot of transparency.
A lot of it.
I feel it. So let the audience know about you. What are some things that you want them to take away from this conversation as you get started?
Well, one, that I'm a flawed human trying to figure it out. You know what I'm saying? I think we all are, and we can relate on that level. That I am like super passionate about spirituality, super passionate about love, super passionate about families, black families to be specific. You know what I'm saying? Black love to be specific. Let me rewind that a little bit.
I love it.
And I'm all about like figuring out what can we do to reach our highest potential. I think like that is the MO of everything that I'm doing for myself, for my family, for my community, etc. So I think as we speak, I'm hoping that that's some undertone that's like present in everything I do, whether we talking professionally, my experience, my nonprofit, the coaching business, being here, meeting you, how we connected, etc. So yeah, hopefully come through.
I love it. So Dejan, I'm gonna just until that gets off of my body, I'm gonna keep saying it. I hear a lot of self-mastery.
Big.
I hear a lot of passion.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I hear a lot of pride.
Yeah. See, it's crazy because I feel like that's something that I was called to because at a young, it's not like I grew up in an environment or having conversations with folks where that was the topic of discussion, self-mastery. But I did grow up playing sports, I grew up playing sports, so discipline is a practice. And as I learned more about my ancestors and being grounded in the beliefs that they had around spirituality, it kind of grew that sense of pride. And it kind of tapped into my natural curiosity. And I dove deep into it, into self-mastery, into Kemen, into ancient Egypt.
Oh, wow.
They got this saying called sonum bonum, which is like the highest good. So like to perform at your highest good, your highest level, highest potential. And they really focused on liberation of the soul. So through like the mastery of the flesh, which created a whole little thing in me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But all that to say, self-mastery is important. It's big.
I love it. You know, I'm actually going through that process too, and I study
Really?
ancient Kemetic. I study
Nice.
Egyptian,
Okay.
Egyptian history. I was called to that too.
Okay.
I just think that for me personally, I grew up from humble beginnings too, very spiritual, but also very suppressed in my spirituality, and I just had a natural, innate intuitiveness that surpassed my parents' relationship with their higher power, and so they misunderstood me a lot, and they were afraid of me very early on because I would speak things that were too true for a child to speak to.
I hear you.
And so instead of being like, tell me more about that, right, they'll be like, you can't speak to an adult like that, that's disrespect.
That's good.
Stay in a child's place. And so I was like, well, make it make sense. I always say my favorite thing is to say, well, make it make sense. And they couldn't, right? Because that was something that they hadn't explored yet.
Isn't it crazy how we fear what we don't know? Or
Yeah.
like we automatically, it's different. Push it away.
So tell me about your upbringing and how it was being were you an enlightened child or did you become an enlightened man?
You know what? I like to think that I was always enlightened.
Okay.
That there are some aspects of who you are today that were present at a very young age. And we used to, you know, you'll see black parents, grandparents, and even like just family members in general say, that child been here before. You know what I mean? So it's there. And those things that you are naturally, you know, called to, the ones that grab your attention, and you just can't describe where the passion is sourced from.
Right.
I like to think that comes from the soul. So it's like you bring that into this world. And so in that way, my curiosity, my just like understanding of how people move, growing up in the space that I did, and my natural passion for love, I think all fed into the commitment, you know what I mean? And into like wanting to know more, to learn more, to become more of myself.
So they say when young boys are 5, by the age of 5, they start to, their emotions start to be suppressed, right? And they channel them into sports. Right. So I hear you saying that I was a naturally enlightened child, very connected to love, which is the highest source possible.
Yeah.
Right. To self-mastery. How do you, as a black man, being a black boy, have such passion, know that you have such passion, know that you've been here before, and play sports?
Yeah. It's crazy because I didn't play sports until my 7th grade year.
Okay.
So I'm about 12 at that time.
Okay.
Up until that point, I was in the street playing, you know what I mean, with the older kids. On the campus yard, elementary school, racing, playing foursquare, kickball, like getting as much activity as I can in, naturally competitive and love it, just because it brings out a fire, you know what I mean? I think that source is something you got to connect to. You got to stay attached to that, keep it alive as much as possible. And I do think like society as you go to try to take that away from you. But at that time, I found other ways to fuel it. Like I said, activities on the courtyard. I played violin. It's like music was my passion at that time.
Violin.
Yeah.
That's what's up.
Yeah. And I was acting too. And so I didn't find sports until later.
Okay. So how was being such a multifaceted child, how was that growing up? Tell us about like how you grew up, how were you fostered, how do you go from not doing sports to be able to do sports, and but back then you were just a natural leader on the court, like in elementary school. So were you one of those annoying kids that was great at everything and everybody didn't want to go up against you because they knew that you was going to go really ridiculous?
Hard at everything. Absolutely. Went hard at everything. Absolutely. I was definitely one of those kids that took a lot of pride in my ego. I think as a kid you built that confidence that way. And so I grew up with a single mom.
Okay.
I grew up with a single mom.
Shout out to single moms.
All over the world, for sure. Specifically my mom. Shout out to my mom and my aunties and my grandma.
Shout out to Dejan's mama and his aunties. You raised a good child.
I appreciate that.
Amen.
And so, amen now. And so she did a really good job of curating an environment for me that that felt like love. You know what I mean? Like I learned a lot through observation, especially at that time when you can't really figure out and put your finger on what exactly is going on. You don't have the language for it, but you could feel it. It's real. Um, I grew up in a family full of single mothers, and so I was surrounded by love.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, through and through. I was the only child for a little bit.
Okay.
And so all the energy and love was focused on me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I never needed for anything. And so I think that allowed for me to focus more on my experiences as a child.
Yeah.
I wasn't forced to grow up too early at that point. And it wasn't until I met my cousins and, I was socialized by outside of my home to get into sports and to all these other activities. You know what I mean? Like we see a lot of fellas, men in particular, who do have their emotions suppressed, myself included, who end up having to make a choice point between, like, how do we channel that aggression or those feelings in general? How do we express ourselves? And a lot of times you'll see folks either get into sports or the streets. You know what I'm saying? I just chose sports. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you come from a matriarchal family,
Mm-hmm.
right? That openly allowed you to express yourself and connect to the highest form of love. You felt it, you experienced it, and so how does that mold your ability to connect with Black women?
I am way more in tune with myself emotionally because of the experiences that I've had with my family. A lot. On, like, for good and for worse. You know what I'm saying? Just in being used to seeing folks express themselves emotionally helps me identify what I'm going through too. So it's a good observation. At the same time, this world is out of pocket. You know what I mean? For real.
It is.
So I've experienced, like, a lot of trauma from, just the passed down effects of their experiences too. And so that actually, be transparent since we on this podcast, you know what I'm saying? It actually created a certain level of sensitivity and softness to women.
Yeah.
Because I've seen how aggression can hurt women. I've seen how men, through the experiences, have not had those avenues to channel their emotions and let it feed into the house. You know what I'm saying? Physically, verbally, emotionally, etc. So I feel like I've seen a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So what are 5 things in your routine that helps you take care of yourself so you can continue to show up in your highest self?
Space with God and myself. That's important. I learned that through COVID, how important it was when I didn't have it. So when I didn't make that space, creating boundaries and discipline around that too, to protect it.
Yeah.
To make sure that whenever I did get out of routine, that I was able to either get back into it or prevent so many things from easily pulling me out. And that's still a challenge to this day. Are those 2 things? Does that
That's
challenge
3.
2? That's 3? Okay. 2 more. Let's see. Oh, connecting with nature.
Yeah.
Got to tap in with nature. It's like an infinite source. And community, family, friends, people that help hold you accountable, as like the conversation we had earlier, and people that remind you of what you are possible, what you are capable of.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's important.
So let's talk about Black men and boundaries. What is that about? How does that work? How does it benefit Black men to have boundaries?
Oh.
First of all, I love a Black man with boundaries.
Yeah.
I love it. Like, tell me not to disrespect me when I'm being disrespectful, but respectfully, like, right? Like, put yourself first. So, boundaries, it's so sexy.
I want to talk about why women feel the need to test men on a consistent basis in the first place, to potentially disrespect a man. Why even put a man in that position to see how he, respond to it? That I don't get just yet.
Okay. I'm about to be so ratchet right now.
Do your thing.
It's a type.
It's a type?
It's a type that do that, okay?
Okay.
So it's 2 types of two types of women.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a woman who doesn't know herself, who's looking for a father to lead her through Black men. Then there's a woman who is willing to learn herself, who just hasn't found someone to give her the insight of how to do that. And I think that in the Black community, we don't give women grace to not know because we're so used to women knowing. And I think that women who are toxic take advantage of their immaturity, and because they're not taking the accountability and ownership that it takes to be a woman who's self-mastered. And I've had this conversation with many, many, many women and many men, enough to know that there's a level of disconnect women have from the responsibility not to show up toxic because society has told them they're justified in their rage.
Facts.
And I talked about this on another podcast.
I believe it.
Yeah, I talked about this on another podcast where I had to go on my healing journey where I had to identify with being a toxic woman. I was raised by a toxic woman. So mine was learned behavior. I've always been a good person, but being a good woman wasn't modeled to me. What it was modeled to me is to be dominant, you know, to war with men, and then to be kind to them when you want to manipulate them.
Yeah.
And so that's how I led myself as being a woman until I got to a point where I had continued to have failed relationships, and I allowed myself to feel the pain of them. Because at first I used to just next one. Oh, don't feel like, you know, blame, right? I never like took the time to like sit with the fact that I was hurting myself, right? And so when I was able to sit with myself and take accountability and understand that my actions had a reaction and it had a negative experience with myself, I was able to then start to do the internal work necessary to change. And I mean, even on this podcast, any Black woman who's watching this, you need to hold yourself accountable because toxicity goes both ways.
Absolutely.
And it's not just on the Black man to hold, you know, what he's done. It's also on the woman to hold her accountability and not being toxic too. So I think that there's two types of women. And the women that, you know, I want every Black man to meet is a woman who's humble enough to change.
That part, and that word humble. Because even in hearing the story, I could imagine how many times you had to put your pride aside to even say, okay, I can own up to this one. You know what I'm saying? Like, I am not perfect, and he did wrong, but I still had a role to play in that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, like, can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, because I'm perfect.
Yeah. I could imagine.
And I don't do anything wrong.
All right.
So, no, I just felt like, you know, I had the house, I had the car, I was beautiful, I was successful.
Yeah, for sure.
I was all things that a successful Black woman was positioned myself to be, but I was internally broken. Like, I wasn't happy. I was around tons of fake people. I would just put it on. And the life-changing event that happened to me is that 2 weeks after I had my son, I found out his dad was cheating on me the whole relationship. And I'm just looking at my son like, why are you here? Like, why? What? And so again, it goes back to my mind. I'm like, make it make sense, right? So what made it make sense is me taking responsibility.
That's so real. Look, oh my God. I think one thing that we don't talk or give enough attention is how that learned behavior creates that cycle and impacts us in our lives. I think a lot of times we grow up understanding that these are traits that I do not like in my parents, these are traits that I do like, and somewhere in that translation, we lose sight of the ones that we actually adopt just because we observed it. And I hate the fact, in my line of work, I do a lot of shifting, right? I consider myself like a divine agitator, a disruptor, and for real. And in doing that, I don't know why you laughing like that.
Because I consider myself one of those people. I'm so messy when it comes to
that do count. That count.
Making it
That's
make
the way
sense.
to do that. That's the way to get that done for sure. And in that though, like when I'm big on social engineering. I'm gonna tie this all up. So like I'm big at looking at how our environment plays a role in who we become. And when it comes to like this disruption thing and looking at a mass scale, when we talk about how many Black men are not in the household, largely just because incarceration system, society telling us that we need to provide, we need to make it happen, and there aren't clear ways to get it done or as convenient ways as the other men, and we seeing the pressure is up. You get what I'm saying? We gotta make something happen. Getting caught into that like cycle, the impact that it has on the household when there isn't the structure, there isn't the discipline, there isn't that like masculine energy to balance. So then we got parents, single moms who take on both roles. We got dads who try to be as loving and as disciplined, and it's it's a lot to put on a person.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
it's a
saying?
lot to put on a child because the other day my son called me the boss. I'm like, I'm not your boss. I'm your mother. He was like, okay, boss. And I'm like, I am not your boss. Like, I am your mom. Like, I have a job that calls me a boss. You're my son. I'm your mother. Don't call me a boss. Like, right? But I think that's that imbalance you're talking about. As much as I try to co-parent with his dad, he hasn't done the healing work to really see past his ego. So my son sees me as both and, because I'm having to pull up on him a lot. And I don't want to do that. But I think that if you're a leader innately, you go and lead. You're not just because you're like, oh, I'm like a single parent and I don't have, like, no, you go do what you need to do to make it make sense, right? So I had to correct him in calling me a boss, because I don't ever want to I don't want my son to see me as a person who bosses him around, because I don't want him to think that women boss him around. I want him to be empowered to know that you can still be a strong woman and be a mother. Like, you don't position me as your boss.
Yeah, that's an important distinction too. Because for some reason, it seems like not everyone, I'm sorry, but it just seemed like there's a common perception of if a woman is like has leadership qualities, then she's automatically like fully in her masculine.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that the men is being emasculated. But then there's this idea of a power couple where both folks are like equally, powerful. You know what I mean? I like the idea of a power couple. You know what I'm saying? And I think that when it comes into defining, what we own that gives us that empowerment, it gets a little blurry. Mm-hmm. But it's crazy because I recently finished a book, or close to finishing a book, by Common. It's called Let Love Have the Last Word. Y'all heard of it?
Yeah.
It's a memoir.
I haven't read it, though.
It's a good book. He kind of followed Bell Hooks' All About Love approach, where he defined loves in all these different contexts. But he starts talking about his relationship with his daughter, his mom, and how it relates to his relationship to women that he dates. And in this one particular section of it, he's going to therapy. First of all, everyone needs to go to therapy.
Yes. Especially black people. Listen, I've never met a black person who doesn't have trauma.
For real.
I've never met him.
And I know some people think trauma is a negative thing. It's inevitable. It's a part of life. You could have like a bad day, scrape your knee and get trauma from it. You get what I'm saying? And on top of that, you don't have to have problems to go to therapy. You could it's a preventative care too. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't have to be a reaction. It's just a way for you to make sure you are on top of your game at all times. You know what I'm saying? So I just need to say that first. So he's talking about going to therapy and how he grew up with a single mom. And what he did not understand were the ways in which he picked up her emotional needs as a son. You know what I'm saying? Just because either A, she did it unconsciously, and it happens, you know what I'm saying? Just from the perspective of having to play both roles.
Yep.
It's the energy that you can't see that is like giving off that signals to him on a deep spiritual level. And then there's also the ways in which he took it on, because he is a young man who wants to provide. Like, it's innate. We don't want to see people around us hurt. And I relate to that because I grew up in a household like that where I didn't want to see my mom crying. Yeah. I don't want to see her feeling on type of way. I'm like naturally like, hey, let me do something for, like, what's up? What can I do? And so when it come down to boundaries, like, I can't speak for every man. I can speak for myself in that has been difficult for me to do because I grew up in a household around women where I naturally wanted to provide for everybody. Right. And so I had to learn what boundaries I needed just to have self-preservation. Yes. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Otherwise, I'm like getting pulled left and right, or I'm choosing to go left and right. I'm taking on other people's responsibilities because I trust myself to hold the weight to get it done for everybody. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think that's powerful because I think that, I know that just from like sitting down with my brothers and talking to them about the ownership they took when my mom wasn't there, because like they got narratives like, so I'm very transparent about this. Like, my dad was a street pharmacist and my mom was like just his writer. And they had no financial responsibility, like literacy or anything. And so when he left and would go to vacations, right, he left my two brothers in charge, and they took that authority, and but they were young boys. And so I remember my brother sharing the story about my mom not being able to pay the PG&E, and she didn't come to him directly and say that. She was just kind of like in deep thought, and he just asked her, like, Mom, what's wrong? And she shared it with them. So
that's when he decided to go sell drugs because his father sold drugs, and that's
Street
how
pharmacist.
he brought that's how he brought in income. So he's like, okay, I'm the man of the house. I see the man in the house doing this. This is what I'm capable and able to do. It was accessible to him because it was a family business.
Facts.
So he, as a man, did what he needed to do. But what that ended up leading him down is down a ways to meet his needs as a young child that caused him to not be his higher self, right? And I think that what you just said makes a lot of sense to me, understanding his role of responsibility a lot more. And why I think it's important for women who especially are single mothers to not talk down on the father if the father isn't present, because that's another way of trauma bonding. To not think negatively of Black men in general and teach their children to be afraid of them, because that's trauma bonding too. And to go to therapy too. Therapy doesn't have to be like a traditional, like you sit with the therapist and you tell your therapist your business. It can be through dancing. It can be through community. It can be through having a mentor or someone who's really going to be wise enough to help you emotionally regulate so that you don't spill that onto their children, to your children. And a lot of single mothers, we do that blindly because oftentimes we don't have people to go to, and our kids are right there, and we suffer in silence a lot because we don't want to have our business out there in the street, or we feel like we're being loyal to the man, and that's not helping us either. And so those are just some ways in which I feel like, as a single mother myself, my daughter, she's 17 now. She just started. Today is her first day at TSU.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yes. So she couldn't wait to leave California. Like, she was like, I'm going to an all Black school, right? So she shares with me some of the ways in which I trauma bonded with her too. And it wasn't like I never spoke ignorantly or ill about her father, because her father is a really great father. I can say I'm blessed. I'm a blessed woman to not have to raise my children alone. Like I don't know how that feels, but I do know the ebbs and flows of what it means for a man to mature into being a great father, and I have had to supplement a lot in those relationships. And in that supplementation, and me not being connected to myself, I did trauma bond with my daughter. And she's just able to tell me, like, when you said this, when you said that, when you did this, when you did that, that was too much for me. So, I mean, I think what women can do, especially single mothers, from what you're sharing, is to hold space for Black men to grow, but not enable them, and respect their boundaries. Like, if a Black man tells you to get out his face, to stop, or if he goes silent, leave him alone.
Make that space. Oh my God.
Leave him alone, because developmentally you got to process a lot, and sometimes we don't understand the power of our words, because we be speaking a lot of stuff and wisdom, but sometimes the message is hard to take, and you got to sit with it sometimes. So that's why for me, I'll just say whatever God put on my heart to say, and I leave it alone. I don't have nothing to prove. I don't need to draw this long equation. I'm just going to let God use me, and I'm going to shut up. But a lot of women feel like they got to have the last word, but that's because they're being emotionally irregulated. And you got to calm yourself down, because the man can't give you that. And your kids can't be the supplementation of that rage. So it just goes back to when you're respecting a man's boundaries, especially a Black man's boundaries, it's not going to look like yours. And you're not going to get what you want in that moment. And you have to really just own your ability to be a safe person, right? To make sure that you hold space for a Black man to have his boundaries. Because then he can go out in the world and request the same respect. Yeah. Because he's getting it in the home.
That part.
Talk a little more about, like, the roles and responsibility in which how Black men are very silent about how stressful it is to, like, just navigate being a Black man and have responsibility for so many people.
Yeah, I don't know if my thoughts on this are the most healthy.
No, let's talk about it.
Yeah, just because I feel like it's the role of the man to take on these responsibilities and to protect his family emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and physically, which means there's a cutoff point at how much you should share with your partner. Okay. In my eyes. Okay. So let me say it like this. It's a cutoff point to how much I should share with my partner. Okay. Because I don't want her taking that on. So I'm going to protect her from that. My kids too. You know what I mean? And so I think when we're talking about boundaries, it's important to like take the time and study your partner so that you could know the things that are being said and what aren't being said.
Mm-hmm.
So like clear signs of where a boundary is being drawn and enforced, and how that person responds to the situation that caused it in the first place. You know what I'm saying? Like some people need the space. Like I need space to decompress, to like digest whatever it is that I'm going through and to think through my own thoughts. And so I I require solitude, which could come off as like pushing it away a little bit. You know what I'm saying? But that's also like a protection thing for the family. That's the role that I play. And
so talk to me more about like, because like I said, I feel like Black men need to be empowered more to have safe spaces and to request that and to really set a standard. I think that, well, I keep saying I think that. I know that, you know, one thing as Black people, where we can start really the healing process is in our most intimate relationships that we have with people, because those are the hardest conversations. I always tell my daughter, if you can have a conversation with me about your feelings and request that I respect you, when you go out there in the world, you'll fear no one, because I'm your mother.
You know, women, y'all have already normalized that space for each other. We don't have that as men.
Why?
You know, because we, first of all, it probably go back to like ancient times. You know what I'm saying? Like just being a warrior. You don't really have as much time for emotions. You know what I'm saying? Emotions get you killed. And today, like in the streets, or like just being somebody that is at war with like society, trying to make stuff happen, which it all synonymous. You know what I'm saying? You don't have as much time to be in your feelings, especially when your environment doesn't care about your feelings.
Right.
Whether it's in business. I just saw a clip today that was from 50 Cent saying there's more ruthless people in business than it is in the streets.
It is.
You know what I'm saying? So like you can't whine, you can't emotionally manipulate somebody, you know what I mean, to get what you want in that space. So you gotta cut that off.
So what are some tips that you can give Black men to create safe spaces to express themselves, or to have, like, find safe people? Like it, I don't know. I just feel like we could problem solve this. We could try to speak these things into existence if we just thought about like not shutting down at the option.
Yeah.
So shutting down wasn't on the table. What other avenues could you take?
First, like I don't think a lot of men know what a safe space is. Like that's like a vague word, and not to say like anybody's ignorant or anything. It's just that it's so abstract. Like, what does it mean to be in a safe space? Is it a space where I just feel like I can take my armor off, where I'm just cool, I'm chilling?
Yeah, it does.
Is it a space where I'm not like, you know, having to worry about somebody getting at me right here and right there? Like, what constitutes safe? And I think that's something. There are some like universal things for sure, like where you're not having to worry about survival at all. When you just at peace, at flow, you could like think less about whether or not you're gonna eat. You could think less about somebody trying to kill you. You could think less about getting at somebody. You could just, there are certain things that are off the table because you are in this particular setting. But then there are other aspects of safeness that have to be defined by you. And I think that we are growing up in a space that is keeping us away from our emotions. So like, you got to be able to identify what emotions you having. It's men who are 20-something, 30-something, 40-something, 50, at all age ranges, that's still learning what they're feeling on the inside to this day. You know what I mean? And there's like a layer of just identification, recognition, and familiarity that needs to develop within self to know, all right, I'm feeling frustrated right now. And on a deeper level, I'm starting to get frustrated. Like, it's one thing to be able to identify it. It's another thing to be able to identify it before it forms. Where it's like in a process. And it's power in both.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But that third space where you don't know anything, you just feel frustrated, so you mad, so you're going to take it out on people, like that's an issue. You know what I'm saying? And so in order to like create these safe spaces in the first place, we got to know ourselves on that level emotionally.
So then how do Black men get married then?
Because Black women want love. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
I'm just thinking,
I got it.
like,
you need it. I got it. What you know? It's supply and demand.
That's so. I'm just thinking because it's like if Black men don't feel like they're safe, you know, to fully express themselves, and the idea of having a safe space hasn't been created, then How do you marry someone?
Yeah, I mean, we talking about like a specific niche, microscopic area. You know what I mean? Like, it's men that are emotionally aware, that know themselves, that lead with, grace, that lead with intelligence, that do the work, that have done the work, and are able to, and grew up in healthy households.
Yeah.
So they've seen it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there's this picture that all black households have one single parent.
I know, right?
That's not true, though.
It's not true.
And we all don't pass down the same traumas. And so there are men who know themselves, again, that are able to recognize when they're in a safe space, that have been able to meet somebody that they love, you know what I mean, that feed them, that they just feel special around. You know what I'm saying? So it's not all men.
So what are some things in your 20s, early on, or if you're still in that space, that you, if you could go back, you would tell your younger self?
One thing for sure is like not sweating the small stuff, and that is all small. Like in the grand scheme, it's
right.
all small, man. I think I in my 20s, and I'm still in my 20s, but earlier on there was a period where I felt like I didn't have time. I expected to die early. I'm just keep that. Like I grew up in an environment where you're lucky to be 21, 18, et cetera, et cetera. So I always felt like this sense of urgency, like go get it, go get it, go get it, go get it. And I think that caused me to overlook some things. That caused me to not sit with myself, to not get comfortable with discomfort internally. I mean, I play ball, and so when you play sports, sports is a great, like, just space. It's like a microcosm of life. It's great for teaching you so many different lessons. I've learned to sit with discomfort when I have a vision, and I'm pursuing that vision. But when it comes down to having a vision for where I want to be emotionally, my level of emotional intelligence, my level of maturity, those are more cloud, abstract concepts for me. So I wish that back then I took more time sitting with myself and getting to know that level of myself, developing an intimate relationship with me and with God back then. It looked different. I was pursuing it, obviously, for me to get where I am now, but it looked different then. And so if I could have just not sweat as many small things and appreciated exactly what I was going through when I was going through it, as opposed to saying, I'm here, but I need to be there. Let me figure out what's that. Forget everything I'm going through now. Let's get here. I feel like it would have been different.
So how do you find balance in the 4 areas: spirituality, physical, mental health, financial freedom, and intimacy? How do you find balance?
That's hard. It's a challenge every day, of course. But I think I try to be intentional in everything that I'm doing, and creating a routine and a structure. I want to make sure I'm feeding all those areas on a consistent basis. So I literally do things every day that's for my mind, my body, and my spirit.
Yeah. So making sure that you check in with all parts of you, not some of you. We have a guest, Anisha. She's sick today, but she is really big on creating a safe space for herself, and she's identified what that is for herself. Yeah. And she's also, me and her were talking about on the last episode how she's allowing herself to make mistakes. Yeah.
Ooh, that's tough.
Yeah. And so just embracing that. So my thing is, what helps me have balance in those 4 key areas is I know I'm going to wake up a different person, probably 9 times out of 10 every day. So I don't hold myself accountable for being the same person every day.
That's a fact.
Because part of being a multifaceted person is that you're a different person. And I think that a lot of women, especially Christian women, we up in a very dominant. So my background was just a lot of craziness. It was all about showing up healthy. So I think just even that narrative of walking a straight fine line, because my mom was very perfectionism, and she was like, you got, in order to be here, you have to show up in these, and she had criteria.
Standard.
Yeah.
It's important.
I mean, it is, but not when it's fake. And so for me, I think just a lot of my upbringing and just living in a very multifaceted, traditional household, and then having to be traditional at the same time. And everything that we did was for survival mode. It wasn't for sustainability and longevity. So just having to constantly show up with just different masks on to kind of assimilate into different areas, it made me very different and made me different every day. And it made me have to embrace my differences because we would live in one area, live a different lifestyle. And I tell people this all the time. When I went to college, I realized that teenage pregnancy and single parents and fathers who weren't drug dealers were not normal. Like, I was like, what? That's not normal. It was like, whew, like, what the hell? What? Huh? Everywhere I looked around, that was that. Yeah. And so we played, but like that's what I'm saying. Like, for my parents, like, even though I was raised in like, I wouldn't even say the neighborhoods that we were raised in were like extremely toxic, but they were toxic because my father was a drug dealer, so we were afforded not to have to live in that type of property. But when you compared our lifestyle to, say, a nuclear family, black family lifestyle, we were criminals. But where I'm from, we were upper echelon, so it wasn't. Yeah. I was a princess. Like, it wasn't like, you know, where I'm from, I'm like top tier. So like when I go to college, it's like, no, you can't even say what your parents do. You can't even talk about that. I got a whole baby on my hip trying to go to the frat parties. It was a lot of things that I had to process. And I feel like in my ability to assimilate into those social systems, I had to really, really learn how to like myself because I was indoctrinated in so many other people's psyche that told me how I was raised was wrong and that it was something to be embarrassed about. And so I never talked about it. And I ended up, you know, like I said, I credit my mother and my father to make me like be able to be a very high survivalist because I instantly realized the things I needed to correct it, and I course corrected them real fast so that I could be successful in college, and I was. But then after that, that's why I said, like, I had to really look in the mirror when I was successful according to the criteria of what a successful black woman was, because I still came from those hood traumas. So I'm like, professionally successful, but I have hood traumas, and I'm like, it's not making sense. Yeah, and then I'm looking at my son and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing here? And it was because the way I was raised was still in my body, in my psyche. It was running my narrative. And no matter what level of education I attained, I was still near from that space as a little girl who needed to find her way to who she truly was. So like now I'm in this space where I wake up every day, I'm a different person. I could be ratchet, I'll cuss you out. I could be spiritual. I could just be all these different things. But don't expect anything from me. And that's just where I'm at.
Are you still the person that is learning to like yourself?
That's a good question. I actually started 3 weeks ago, not with liking myself because I love myself, with just being enough. Like, as a high performer, there's always a mountain to climb, a river to cross, and a journey to take. And when I look around at my life, my house is decorated, my car is in good shape, my kids are healthy, I'm healthy, my business is taken care of, you know, the people who support me in my business like me, like my leadership. So I'm okay with who I am right now. It's an extension of me. If I want to be greater, then I can take that. I don't live in that like mindset anymore because that's what used to drive me crazy. Like, it almost like it was a space of insanity of like having to put these goals in front of yourself and having to have this overarching narrative of having to go somewhere. So I'm breathing a lot more now. Nice. I'm accepting the fact that I have a child that's out of the home and she's a great person. Like, she has a good heart. My son is very adventurous. He's emotionally intelligent, like a mofo. Like, he's teaching his father even how to slow down. I give a lot of things to God because I know I'm reached a threshold that it's not me. And I just try to, as best as I can, just take all the toxic people out of my life and don't really focus on the fact that they've been in my life for a long time. Yeah. If your energy is whack, you can't be in my safe space because I don't like whack energy. Like, I don't give whack energy. I don't entertain whack energy. I'm all about energy that's going to provide, grow, add space, peace, longevity, and I think that's, for me, that's been the hardest thing to acknowledge.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it. I also think that's the most important thing when you're trying to rise above your environment.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, you start wanting more for yourself, and you start to identify what it is that you're shooting for.
Mm-hmm.
And in that sense, you changing your frequency.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that the things around you going to change with you.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You might have to make that adjustment yourself, which include folks. You know what I'm saying? It include are the first people who got access to you when you wake up, when you go to sleep. You know what I'm saying? When you step into the world and whatnot. All your spaces. So I like that.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
And I think a lot more what I want to see more black women do is not connect to struggling. Just stop it. Like, and I know it's hard to just stop because we're so used to, like, identifying with things being hard.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But if we really just were honest about how we felt, like, for example, I have very multifaceted clients that feel a lot of things and just perform completely different. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, why don't you go to your birthday party, be sad, say what you need to say, turn up, and then go home and go to sleep because you were your fully self-actualized self. Like, why don't you just be free to do that? And I want to encourage more people to, like, be diversified. You don't have to have, like, an amazing day and not just be an amazing day. You can wake up sad, then switch it around, then have to double back, and then go 10 steps further. It's okay to be a fully expressed person if you're not projecting onto people. Like, you can be in your own energy. So my mantra that I continue to live by, and I just really, like, when I go to places that I'm like, all right, Nia, you gotta stay in your energy, is that I'm the standard. Period. And I don't negotiate with that. There's 1,000,001 people who can try to argue with that with me, but opinions are not facts. So until that's otherwise proven wrong, I'm the standard.
I hear that.
And I just own that every day. And I think that when black women and black men start to just be their own standard, no matter, like, where they are in their growth and development, and love themselves enough to, like, really hold that in integrity, the world would change because people would have to respect us.
Absolutely. I think the world is already on notice that they need to respect us, that they are.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I think there are instances of disrespect on, like, a mass level.
Mass level.
You know what I'm saying? But that's not going to last too much longer.
I know. That's why I'm just like, I'm grateful for that. So I have one more question and I want to ask you. So every morning when you wake up, what do you ask yourself?
How I'm going to get it today. How I'm going to get it today. Right. Yeah, you know, when I wake up, the first thing I do, I sit with myself. That's when I make the time to go to sit with God, have the conversations, and meditate. Silent meditation in particular. And then I do some yoga, and I do a core workout just to be productive. And I have, like, a board, a whiteboard with, like, my challenges for the day, my certain, I call it Power 3, which I got from a mentor of mine named Osei. Bro had gave me this, like, identifier of 3 things that you need to accomplish today for it to be, like, you know, successful in your eyes. So I got that Power 3 up there, and then I have like some sayings, some, like, mantras. You know what I'm saying? Big on affirmations.
Good.
You know, big on affirmations. Anything that just reminds you of your strength and greatness. So in those things, it includes making sure that I'm, like, in the right mental space to go get it.
Good.
And instead of touching that fire, we got to move with a passion in this world.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, Jajan, what message can you leave with black women today?
Black women? Oh, to a sister, love on your black man.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Love on your black man. Make a safe space for him. You know what I'm saying? And treat a black man today.
I just said that.
Yeah, treat a black man today with some love. Just because don't let him say nothing. Just go give it to him. Whatever it is that you think he really want from you, right there, go do that.
I just want to let Anisha know that I'm in tune, okay? So what can you leave black men with today? What's a message you can leave them with today?
Oh, for black men, I say the highest human act is to inspire. They go for both. But I'm going to go ahead and rock with that Nipsey quote right there because you walk around with a lot of power, way more than you even know. or maybe you do know it. But either way, you everything starts and ends with you, brother. So go ahead and make sure you operate at your highest, inspire somebody, and make that move.
Absolutely. So let the audience know where they can find you at, and speak into existence where we can find you at in 5 years.
Oh, ooh, okay,
Where
let's
we gonna
go.
see you at?
Man, yeah. I'm gonna be president. You know
Oh,
president.
okay.
I just started a nonprofit, Move of Grace. Be on the lookout. It's all about disrupting, you know what I'm saying, all the things that try to hold us back in our environment to make sure that we could operate at our highest. You know what I'm saying? It's, disrupting cycles of trauma, you know what I'm saying, breaking cycles, creating that internal movement so we can inspire a global movement together. You know what I'm saying? So Move of Grace. I am starting a coaching business that's doing the same thing, but more on an individual level. So how do we disrupt the things that hold us back? How do we get out of our own ways? How do we make sure that we protecting ourselves and doing what we need to do? Awesome. You can find me on IG at Move of Grace. That's also the name of my nonprofit on IG, so you're going to see both of them. Either way, I'm reachable.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Okay, and so where can we hold you accountable in 5 years?
I'm going to hold myself accountable.
Okay, we're going to help you as a community.
I appreciate that. In 5 years, Move of Grace needs to be a household name. I want to be known for the way in which we pour love into the community. I want to be known for the way in which we inspire folks, you know what I mean, to just tap in with themselves and to make sure that the black family is protected. You know what I'm saying? Uplifted, protected, and empowered.
Absolutely.
Hold me to that.
So we have Dejan. He's spoken his manifestation into existence. He's giving you guys tons of nuggets to take home. He's on his power here on this stage. And so we want to continue to support his movement, to follow him, to share this episode. And again, if you guys want to be here, we want you here. We want you to share your best self. You want to meet your true, authentic, highest self. And even if you're in your process of getting there, we just want to highlight you. So let us know that you want to be here by commenting. You can DM us or you can email us at team@ridgelconsulting.com and we will surely get back to you. So this has been another amazing episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Of Black Exploration with Nia, and I'm excited to see you at the next show. Peace.